What is Tantra? Tantra is a spiritual movement that originates in Kashmir. The goal of a Tantric practitioner is to achieve both spiritual liberation and success in the worldly life. And this is something that makes Tantric practitioners quite a bit different from other spiritual practitioners, at least in the Indian context, where spirituality often means that you would need to say goodbye to your ordinary life and your family. Tantra is, on the other hand, a spiritual practice that actually allows you to stay with your family, stay with your household. And on the Tantric path, there is a big focus on knowledge and self-realization gained through direct experience. This means that, there's only so much you can learn from listening to other people or from reading scriptures. You can say reading all the scriptures in the world will give you a lot of information, but it doesn't really necessarily entail that you understand the message of the scriptures in this direct way where you are completely sure and where you completely understand the texts. So in Tantra, you are asked to not just study in an intellectual way, but practice. Practice by reflecting, by finding your own truth. Practice by using tools such as ritual and mantra and mudra and physical yoga postures, for example, yantras. Tantra comes from the Sanskrit root tan, which means to elaborate on or to expand on, and the Sanskrit root tra, which means to save or to protect, and it can also be translated as a tool. So Tantra is a tool that helps you expand your consciousness. That could be one translation of the word, and I'm hereby not saying that it's the only one or the right one. Remember, you need to find your own truth. Another way we could look at it would be that by elaborating, by pondering, by wondering, you will find the tool that will protect you, or which will save you, or which will grant you liberation spiritually as well as in your everyday life. Non-dual Tantra is a non-dual way of seeing. We can say it's a philosophy, we can say it's a lifestyle. So again, Tantra is not just that you are good at attaining knowledge by remembering what someone else has told you or by remembering all the books in the world. But it's a lifestyle, it's a way of seeing that you bring into every single moment of your life to inform your thoughts, your perspective, your experience of being alive. Non-dual means that it's a belief system, or it's a way of seeing where you are not separate from the divine. And there is this idea, let's call it that, that everything and everyone in the entire cosmos is pierced through by the same life force energy. So this is a way of thinking, a way of seeing that is characteristic of shamanistic belief systems from all over the world. So we can also say that Tantra is one kind of shamanism. And there is this interesting paradox where we can name the divine, we can pray to the divine, but in the same time we are praying to or naming parts of ourselves. So you are not separate from the world around you. You are part of this big ecosystem of shared consciousness and life force energy. And you have the capability to tap in to this wisdom and this energy and this field that is both you and much greater than your limited self. So this is what we call the capitalized self. A tantra is also a scripture, a certain kind of scripture. And typically, the scripture contains a dialogue between Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is consciousness or the masculine force. Shakti is energy or the feminine force. So guard and goddess. And some of these first tantras are from the 6th century. Tantra is also a science. So it's a science dealing with what reality is. And it's also a science that is investigating the entire cosmos, but also the body as a microcosmos and a divination tool. So your body is the means through which you will experience potentially the deeper truth, the essence, nature of this universe. And another thing about the scriptures is that they are said to be, we can call it downloaded or channeled by sages who are bringing in the message of Shiva. Mantra is a very important tool in Tantra. Vibration is a whole science of its own, and vibrations are the divine. Every sound is the goddess, and when you are chanting a mantra, you kind of awaken your awareness to the goddess within you. You are awakening the goddess within you. So I think it will be appropriate to actually start this introduction by chanting Om, which is the primordial sound, which is part of each and every one of us. Why is it a good idea? It's a good idea exactly because this is a science that cannot, or a way of thinking that cannot be understood completely through the means of intellectual thought. You need to get into your body, you need to get into the practices in order to understand. So you can sit, you can lie, doesn't really matter. Just open yourself to the experience of chanting. Take a deep breath in and then let go through your mouth. Inhale for Om. Notice the vibrations within you. Notice the effect of the vibrations. So how can we start our journey on the tantric path that goes beyond merely being intellectual? We can start by wondering. We can start by asking ourselves questions. And this is exactly how the Vijnana Bhairavi Tantra begins. Shakti, the goddess, asks her beloved Shiva, "Dear Lord, what is this reality?" She says, I've been reading all the scriptures, I have heard all the talks, but I'm still not 100% convinced. So please help me understand on this deeper level. You might be able to find someone who will answer you, but you will not be able, most likely, to find someone who is gonna convince you to that 100%. That can only be achieved through the direct experience. Otherwise, it's most likely manipulation. So you draw your awareness into yourself and you start asking, so who is it who is thinking my thoughts? Who is it who is breathing me? I'm not doing anything to breathe. I am being breathed. Or can it be in any other way? Who is looking through my eyes? And what is it that I am seeing? What is reality? Am I seeing the truth when I am all caught up in my emotions? Am I seeing the truth when I am busy living life, just, running in this hamster wheel of the everyday life? Following what other people tell me to do because it has been so for 1,000 years? Is my imagination the reality? Or is this thing that people around me call reality the reality? What about when I'm dreaming? What is that? So the very first step is to become awake in this degree where you become curious. And funny enough, we all start out as curious beings, as children, asking questions to learn about life. But at some point, many of us stop asking questions and begin to take things for granted. So what happens when you start to question and to feel the wonder, the real sense of, wow, I really want to know what it's all about. This whole mystery that we call life. This is an invitation to experience the effect on you. In Tantra, there is a concept, shunya, which means the void. And I think this is a very good way of starting this introduction by asking the question, does it make a difference whether you see emptiness or fullness? If you look at the picture here in the left side of the screen, or if you are imagining the vast universe, Are you seeing nothingness of freedom sky? There is no right or wrong answer, but your answer is controlling your experience, informing your experience of life. If you step into the mystical path, it will most likely be because you start to feel a longing. Maybe you have already felt it. A longing deep in your soul to find answers, to find deeper meaning. You start looking either in nature, you start looking for a teacher, you start looking in scriptures, you start looking in yourself for answers. And this can be the initiation of the spiritual path for you. But maybe you also one day wake up to going that step deeper into the mystical initiations in order to be initiated into the mystical wisdom. You must be prepared to let go of everything, all the thoughts about yourself, who you are and who you are not, what you know, what you don't know. You must be prepared to let go of everything. And then you can ask yourself, am I dissolving into nothingness? Or is the great freedom sky opening, the sky of possibility? My awareness to my full potential. I am everything and I am nothing. You must be prepared to face death. But most likely, if that time comes for you in this life, your faith will also be so strong that you know that even as everything is taken away from you in your experience, something much greater than yourself is holding you, supporting you, and transporting you to the next level. You will be reborn. Of course, the mystical path is not for everyone. Of course, there are different ways of accessing your truth and different dimensions of accessing your truth. And you need to follow the longing within you, the call within you. So for the next few slides, we will make it all a little bit simpler. And I will still invite you to keep pondering about the huge difference in the life, or in your life, it will make whether you see something as empty or full, nothing or everything. So the way you are seeing is informing your experience of life. And now when you know you have the possibility of, let's call it, changing glasses, you can choose which way of seeing is more beneficial for you. I will now invite you into the knowledge, the wisdom of Prajavihinya Hridayam, also called the heart of recognition. And it's one of the newer tantric texts, very short, but basically if you dive into this one, you're all covered. Actually, in general, it doesn't matter how much you read, how much you study, how many practices you do. If you go deep enough into just a single one, you have the key to the wholeness. You might know this figure of Shiva dancing in a ring of fire. He's standing on only one leg, balancing on this tiny human being, tiny self. So he is stepping on the tiny self and using the tiny bit of himself, the ignorant part of himself, to lift himself into a higher dimension. So again, by asking questions from the part, from what we don't know, we ask questions, and those questions can help us lift to a perspective where we can see more. And Shiva is holding a flame in one hand. He's holding a Abhaya mudra with one hand, which is the fearlessness mudra. And then he is using one arm to cover the heart and simultaneously point towards his lifted dancing foot. And all of this is going on in this ring of fire, which is representing everything chaotic in this universe, everything that comes and goes. So this image where, it's not gonna stop being chaotic around you, but if you pay attention and if you practice, you will be able to find balance and even to use those difficult aspects of life as your podium for your beautiful dance of life. And Shiva consciousness have 5 acts, 5 things that he is doing. And these 5 acts reveal the ultimate reality of the self. We can say that Shiva consciousness is the ultimate self. You are the limited self. And the two of you are not separate. You are the same. The very first act of consciousness is creation. So Shiva, as the dancer, has in one hand a drum, and that is representing the beat of life or creation. So just take a moment to place a hand on your heart. Close your eyes. Draw your awareness into your physical heart. See if you can sense the doom, 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 doom. The creation beating within you. Shiva creates out of the stuff he is another part of himself in order for him to celebrate the whole creation. Because if we don't have someone to look at us, how are we going to know that we have even created something? So the first act is the act of unfoldment. The second act of consciousness is sthiti. It's represented by Abhaya Mudra, the palm facing forward, shoulder height. Palm facing forward is a mudra of fearlessness. Sthiti is the act of maintenance. It's a condition, it's a supportive state. It is the part of consciousness which is already there, which is always the same. And now you can take a moment to wonder, what part of this whole thing we call the universe is always the same? Or you can make it a little more personal and ask yourself, what part of your being is always the same? We all know the body changes. We become hopefully wiser as we grow older. The skin changes, the cell of our body changes, everything maybe changes. So what part of you is this stable condition? Which part of you is the same always? The next act of consciousness is samhara. It's represented as Shiva holding a flame in his hand. Fire is symbolizing the act of dissolution or construction, impermanence, time. So now something has been created out of consciousness. But time has also been created. So there is a contraction, a contracting force after the expanding force. This is nature. Something is being destroyed, so something new can be created. The fourth act of consciousness is Tirodhana. It's represented as the arm of Shiva that moves across the body, concealing his heart and thereby the essence of consciousness or the essence of reality. This is also described as the veil of illusion. And we as human beings can experience this concealment as the act of forgetting. And why would consciousness want us to forget? Because the consciousness, because the divine powers in Tantra are playing with us. You know, we shouldn't be so serious about everything. We need to enjoy life. What's the value of creating something if it's not fun? If they don't appreciate being created and alive. So we are forgetting our essence nature so that we can feel the sense of wonder and amazement and wow, aha, this is how it all works, when we realize that what was concealing our nature was at the same time pointing towards the very truth. And you might see that the arm that is concealing the heart is also pointing at the dancing upward lifted foot representing grace. So the fifth act is the act of revealing. And in Tantra, there's a great love of paradoxes. So there is this understanding that everything in life pulsates between contraction and expansion and contracting. So even when we have experienced some kind of level of awakening, and we will be amazed and full of wonder and full of gratitude for life for maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe some years. At some point, most likely, we will forget, or it will all start to fade, dissolve. And of course, this is just the play of our limited consciousness. And why is that? That's so we again can be amazed. So we again can be touched by grace. For every time we wonder, become amazed, forget, find, we start to see a little clearer. We start to understand the bigger picture. We start realizing more of our essence nature and the purpose of life. So now I will ask you to take a moment to reflect, because remember, this is not just something to be remembered, something to be heard one time and then forgotten all about. Well, that might happen, as we just learned, but it's something to be pondered about. So if you really want to understand, your next step is to take time to reflect and investigate through the vehicle of your body and mind. So how do you experience the 5 acts of Shiva in your life in this moment? Are certain periods of your life characterized by one of the 5 acts more than the other 4? Do you recognize that you have been dancing intimately with all 5 acts of Shiva within the last 24 hours? Feel free to pause the video. You can either just sit and meditate on these questions, or you can take your notebook. And of course, the more often you go back to these questions, the more you can reveal. And now I will ask you to do this little exercise for the next 7 days at least. To try to keep an eye on your emotions without judging them. Just bear witness to the unfoldment of your life. Notice, are the 5 acts of consciousness played out through your emotions? Who knows? And how? And after you have been investigating for a bit, you can ask yourself if your experience of yourself has changed after you started to become more aware of the 5 acts of Shiva.